77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
4 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Dr. Sky Experience. Proudly here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. And through our 2-hour conversation, ladies and gentlemen, hoping that each and every one of you has had the most blessed 4th of July weekend as it continues in force. Get in touch with us as we continue with our great dialogue on subjects like we had in our previous Dr. Sky episodes with American exceptionalism and great stories about what makes America so important, one of the main tenets of the Dr. Sky Experience. As you know by now, or if you're a new listener to this radio archive, the topics that we normally talk about are astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, and, of course, some very thing that we talk about here, the very thing we talk about, American exceptionalism. You can get in touch with us and call in early at 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-9222. No matter where you're listening or calling us during the program, we're here for you in what we like to consider one of the 4 types of conversation. We love it in the form of dialogue. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the gentlemen that are behind this particular radio show. We call them the helmsmen, Bill and Tony, navigating the powerful signal of WABC to you, the nation, the world, and I'm sure the cosmos. What we'll do, ladies and gentlemen, is continue our conversation about American exceptionalism, but not this morning, as we'll hook up with our very special guests that we all talk about and will introduce to this audience in future iterations of the Dr. Sky Experience. What can we talk about this morning for 2 hours? Well, it's everything that's above our heads. We return to our, of course, core tenets, the subjects of astronomy, space, aviation, and weather. And in this particular iteration, we talk about the subjects of astronomy and space. And with us is no stranger to the microphone. He's a good friend of mine. We crossed paths many, many years ago, as we both are very much dedicated to the wonders of the heavens. And in just a moment, we'll be introducing Dr. Carl Herico. He was a guest back here in April talking about his experiences based in the New York metro area. His military service, of course, is great. 6 years was a flight engineer in the United States Air Force. He is Dr. Carl Herico. He, of course, received his doctorate in science and humanities and education from Rutgers University. He taught sciences in many schools, from high schools and even in college. And he had the unusual experience to use the Hubble Space Telescope to photograph a galaxy that's some 77 million light years away, known as NGC 4319, and a quasar, something that we'll get into in a conversation called MRK 205. With that, let's welcome Dr. Carl Herico to the Dr. Sky Experience. Happy 4th of July to you and your family and all the listeners once again. How are you, sir?
Well, hello, Dr. Sky. Thank you for inviting me on your program. I really appreciate that, and I'm not only happy but thrilled to be on a program that's really at the cutting edge of science. And it's not only informative, but it's entertaining, and you can't beat that combination.
Well, and many thank yous, and you say it so well, if I can add that to the conversation. But it's amazing. You and I crossed paths, just to let everybody know out there, more so in the New York metro area. Many, many years ago, I was just a young kid in school. I was in grammar school, to be exact, up in Hackensack, New Jersey. And a good friend of mine, whose father was an aerospace engineer, said, we're going to go tonight to enrich you guys. That was a good friend of mine in school, Mark. And we're going to take you down to a place that has this big telescope in it at Union County College, known as what? Amateur Astronomers Incorporated. And, Doctor, this is interesting because even though I never met you then, and probably saw you when I passed through the hall, who knows? But talk about that experience, because people in areas that are light polluted we have opportunities even today in this show to share with them. It's not just being in the super dark sky. So talk about this whole organization called Amateur Astronomers Incorporated. I was honored to be part of it.
Well, the AAI, or Amateur Astronomers Incorporated, is an amateur organization that was allowed to use the observatory and, of course, the telescopes within the observatory, there were two, on the campus of Union County College in Cranford, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And yes. I first went there to see what was going on. I really wasn't into astronomy at that point too much. And, I saw these two big domes containing the respective telescopes. And I saw amateur astronomers outside. It had to be during warm weather, so probably during the summer, if I recall correctly. And they had their telescopes all over the area outside, as well as those who were inside, who had been trained to use those telescopes inside. And I saw one with his small white reflecting telescope. And as I mentioned before on a previous interview, that he was swiveling this thing around and he was pointing it to various points in the sky, and he's naming each of these celestial objects that he was looking at. He knew the names of all of them. And I was saying, wow, this is fantastic. Look at this guy. How the heck can he do this? How does he know where to go? Because at that time, very few telescopes had any kind of digitized control. No computers.
Yes. You had to do it the old school way, and we'll get into that in this conversation with our special guest, Dr. Carl Herico. He's joining us, ladies and gentlemen, for the 2 hours. And this particular show goes back to the basic tenets of the Dr. Sky experience, where we talk with you, not at you, about the wonders of the universe. And Doctor, I have a little bit of a challenge here for the listeners across the nation and around the world. If it's dark where you are, and if it's clear outside, we'd like you folks, because this is theater of the mind, to be an assisted set of eyes throughout the world, if it's in dark skies and clear. Give us a call at 1-800-848-9222. And what's the challenge? Describe to us or ask your question. And, of course, if you're not outside, you're welcome to call in, too, with all the wonders that we can talk about. But isn't that interesting, Doctor, that we can at least invite people to kind of guide them in their own celestial navigation, if we call it in the sky, to do what? The main purpose of this whole process, this show, is to talk about the great mysteries that are abound and around us. And I think that's a good start. So 1-800-848-9222. And if you're in city lights, of course, we still have, as we're mentioning here, places as close as what? Right there in Cranford, New Jersey. An opportunity. I gather it still exists, right? So we don't tell people to go there if it's not around. It's still in existence, correct?
Oh, yes, it's still in existence. And I'll be going there one of these days again to meet the old people that I made contact with at that time. And there are good people there that know a lot more information than I do, I'm sure, at this point.
Well, let's do this. Let's throw a challenge out there to the listeners of Talk Radio 77 WABC. And particularly even city dwellers have an opportunity to see this. Let's talk about something in the heavens right now, Doctor, that I think is so fascinating. I talk about it in some of the public programs I do. In the summer, as you well know, there's this great triangular group of brilliant stars. There's star Vega, there's a star Altair, and there's a star Deneb. So if you have clear skies right now, all the way from, say, the West Coast, and wherever you're listening, if there's dark and clear skies, this triangle is symbolic, obviously called the summer triangle. But let's dig into a little bit about these individual stars, Doctor, because they're so fascinating. If we put it in proximity to the size of our own sun, 865,000 miles in diameter, wow. What does that mean to everybody listening? 109 Earths would take up the diameter of our sun. And
Whoa.
This is even more amazing. We mentioned it last night when we were talking, or yesterday. We were talking our topics of American exceptionalism, celebrating the great 4th of July, our independence. I mentioned to the audience that the Earth is farthest from the sun right now at a little more than 94,500,000 miles. So let's kind of get into the swing of things here, because there's so many wonderful things, and people are probably scratching their head, right, Doctor? How can we be so hot when we're farthest away from the sun? Imagine if we were closer. Wouldn't it be like hell? Carry that ball for a while. I think that's interesting.
Yes, there's a lot of mysteries like that in astronomy. that being one of them, the idea being that it's not the distance that makes that much difference in terms of our seasons. It's the tilt of the Earth. So the tilt of the Earth it makes a difference in a sense that at one point in our orbit, which is elliptical, and that's why we have a near point and we have a far point. So we're talking about the idea of having an apogee and a perigee, the apogee being the far point and perigee being the near point. Or you can phrase it in terms of using the sun in the word itself and say there's an aphelion, Aphelion, and the other one as well, which is perihelion. And so the same thing applies at the aphelion, we're the furthest away from the sun, and at the perihelion, we're the closest. Now, it's not that much of a difference, though, and that's what makes the difference in the seasons. It's the actual tilt itself from an imaginary line that's drawn through the Earth, forming its axis. And so the axis is tilted to its elliptical path of orbit around the sun. And that tilt makes the difference.
You say it so well, because let me say this, Doctor. This is an exceptional place. I mean, if you think about the Earth, and we look at this not only philosophically, but scientifically, as you know, and probably many listeners know, but for those that don't, here we go with the education that at least we deliver here, and we hope that you're happy with what you're hearing, of course. But the point is, this is a very special place, wouldn't you say? We see water. We see, obviously, human beings, maybe a lot of them, 7.5 billion. But the point is, Carl, Doctor, where else in the solar system do we have anything like us? And even if people like Elon want to go to Mars, it's a vast difference. And Venus, of all the planets like we talk about, has the most circular orbit. But that's literally hell on Earth. Imagine 900 degrees Fahrenheit every day. So tell us, Doctor, the exception here, exceptional. The Earth is so special. It has the ability to heal itself. And look at all the extinctions we've been through. Your analysis of this precious planet, as Carl Sagan talked about.
Yes, we are a special planet in the sense that the conditions are just right. As a matter of fact, that idea is called Goldilocks. And so we're in the Goldilocks zone from our sun. Now, there are other exoplanets going around other stars, other suns, that are at the Goldilocks position or ecozone, or the life zone, as it's also called. And although that's the case, however, the conditions may not be the same because of the makeup of the atmospheres, if in fact those planets have a significant amount of atmospheric conditions. We have it just right for our kind of life to exist in this kind of condition. And that makes it hard for us, although we have plans to have it accomplished, to go to other planets, like even to our satellite, the moon, our natural satellite. The conditions are completely different on the moon, on Mars. Maybe if we have in mind to go to one of the other satellites going around, maybe one of the other planets in our solar system.
Exactly.
We have to bring our whole environment with us in order to survive. There's no other way.
Well, you're so right, Doctor, and it's so interesting because what Dr. Carl Sagan said, I had the honor, maybe some of the listeners out there have met him once when I was in school and I was just a kid and I didn't really understand too much. I just said thank you, and I was kind of like a little groupie for the guy. But obviously he called it the pale blue dot. And if you just think of it philosophically, this is so special, and I don't mean to be repeating myself here. It's just that anywhere else that we look into this universe so far, even though we have these planetary objects, exoplanets, as you described so well, the probability here of life like this, and maybe sometimes many people outside there in the audience may think, well, hopefully it's not like that with the kind of habitation that we have, where we all just simply can't get along. But let me shift gears before we go, to the very bottom of the hour here. I want to talk with you about this whole thing about the summer triangle, and I want to identify the particular stars, and I'll start off with the one Vega. So, folks, if you have clear skies, and if you have your smartphone, and a lot of people use the apps out there, why not go outside if you're in dark enough skies, wherever you're listening to us, And if you point it high up into the sky, you'll have to just search the sky because every location is different because of the far-reaching broadcast band of Talk Radio 77 WABC. But from where I am here in Arizona, the bright blue star, the brilliant of the three, is a star called Vega, 25 light years away, right, Doctor? And if you think about this, the entire solar system, if you see that star, folks, which is much larger than our own sun, we're moving toward that in space at about 200 or more miles per second. So that's hard to imagine. But imagine, folks, what were you doing 25 years ago? In the simplest way, Doctor, we can explain it. That the light left there 25 years ago and it just got here tonight. But tackle some of the others. I mean, Altair, the other part of the triangle, and the star Deneb, if you'd like to continue on that. People, I'm sure, would like to hear more about the other two parts of the triangle that you can see by looking up in a clear sky right now across the listening audience.
Well, the brightest star in the summer sky is Vega, so you can't miss it. If you're looking for the summer triangle, which it's called, you look for a very bright star up in the sky, and that would be Vega automatically. So of that triangle, you spot that star first, and then you can come in line with Deneb and Altair as a result of that.
Yes.
So it's quite an interesting sight to behold as you look up at the sky. And there's, by the way, there's also other types of celestial objects located within areas of the sky. And in Lyra, the harp, you'll find, and Vega is part of Lyra, the harp, you'll find a special kind of object called a nebula. It's called a ring nebula. And it comes from a star that has lost its atmosphere, blowing outward, forming a ring, like you would make a smoke ring coming out of your mouth, blowing out smoke from your mouth. And you could see this ring in that constellation. It's a beautiful thing to behold, and of course you'd have to use a telescope to see it. And I'm not sure whether or not a very powerful pair of binocs might also enable you to see the ring nebula in that.
I've seen it, Doctor, in dark skies, and I was just up at a home we have in the mountains. And, this is interesting because we were doing this just a few days ago before the moonlight came through. And you're right, you could see them. And I had a little pair of, 12 by, 10 by 24 power binoculars. And let me define that. Folks, when you're looking at binoculars, the left number of the two is the power, the magnification, and the right number is the millimeters of the lens that's in the front. So it's like almost an inch, 24 millimeters, 25.4 millimeters to an inch, and 10 power. Yeah, I spotted it with no problem among many other objects, but let's appeal to the people who may not have the super darkest of skies. Believe me, folks, in this 2-hour presentation, talking about what we both love, and I'm sure many of you out there do, there's a lot more information here. But, Doctor, I wanted to add something. The star Altair, one of the three of the stars, is 16 light years away. But we saved the best for last, ladies and gentlemen. The other star of that triangle is Deneb. And in its, version from its Arabic translation means the tail of a giant swan in the heavens. But it's interesting. They're saying allegedly about 2,600 light years away. So that's the real showstopper. Imagine, where were we 2,600 years ago? Ouch. I wasn't here. You weren't there. So the light takes 2,600 years when you see Deneb right now. It took that long. So in summation, give us some other tips about how to view the summer triangle. It's a beautiful story.
Well, as I said before, the idea is to look up at the sky to find the brightest star that you can identify. And that would be Vega automatically as part of that triangle. And let's see, if I recall the positioning of the stars, I may not be correct, but in my mind right now, regarding Deneb and Altair, I believe Deneb is lower left, whereas Altair is lower right relative to Vega.
You're right. Absolutely, Doctor. That's why we have great guests like you to describe these things, because so many people, let me say this, we learn some of this stuff in school, but the best place, as you know, and of course you're an experienced teacher, no doubt you would agree that actually putting hands onto this is really the thing that makes it happen. So it's pretty easy to see. That's one of the things we talk about here on the Dr. Sky Experience. Vega, sometimes referred to in the beautiful poetic version, the sapphire of summer, because of its intense blue light. And isn't that interesting, too, just to add to the conversation? And I'd love the listeners to add to the conversation. Of course, many questions or comments you might have. as we're appealing to those of you that may be out of doors, no matter where you're listening to the powerful signal of Talk Radio 77 WABC. Give us a shout, because we'd love to have a dialogue with you as what you're seeing with your questions. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. As we continue our conversation to move out beyond planet number 3 with our special guest. He's a repeat guest, and he will continue to be, in my mind, Dr. Carl Herico, discussing with us so many of the wonders that we find in our summer sky. So some of the other things, if you're really in a dark sky, right, Doctor, you can actually see the entire band of the Milky Way. How many people have seen that? And maybe you're one out there
rare,
listening.
As a matter of fact, you know, Dr. Sky, there's less and less, unfortunately, that type of sky to see, where it really is dark enough to spot these objects, which can't be seen too readily, in skies that are light polluted. And as I mentioned, it's really hard to find a place. It's like you need a special reserve to even see stars in the sky. It's really unfortunate that that's taking place, but it's a trade-off, I suppose, between advancing kind of development going on in various locations, bringing in all kinds of what we're calling light pollution. And, you know, I know that no one likes it to rain on their parade, and if that were the case, they would have no parades, you know.
Yeah,
or
you're right.
You wouldn't have any rain. The other way
Well,
around.
let me add something to the conversation, too, that if you're out there and you're not a person who uses their smartphone, because remember, we talk about, as you mentioned, Doctor, light pollution. It takes an average of about maybe 30 or 40 minutes for your eyes to get dark adapted. Now, we're talking real serious viewing here. So if you have a smartphone, you can use it, of course. Obviously, it helps. But here's another little tip. A free service that you can get is simply go to this website, skymaps.com. And I use it all the time because we hand these out to children and adults and seniors, because not everybody has or wants to have a smartphone. And I'm holding in my hand The Skies of July 2025, a beautiful rendition here showing us where the principal stars are, what planets are visible, and of course, on the left side, it talks the chronology of things that are happening each day almost of the calendar month, and it describes what's coming up very soon here on the 10th, another of the great full moons. And some people grind their teeth when they say, oh, the full moon. Well, it's a beautiful thing. But many people, as you know, Doctor, they want and crave the dark sky because the full moon is beautiful. But there again, how would you describe the people that are really, really into this? I mean, they'll get upset if you had even one of those little LED lights on you if it wasn't red. They want dark skies.
No. Never have that on. As a matter of fact, I visit one of the dark sky sites here in New Jersey, if you can imagine that.
Yes.
Over at Jenny Jump State Forest in Warren County, Hope, New Jersey. And that's about the darkest area in New Jersey. And still, there's enough light pollution to prevent you from seeing the Milky Way, maybe as you described it. But still, you can see many different types of celestial objects in the sky very well. And this organization, United Astronomy Clubs of New Jersey, is located there. And people bring their telescopes there in order to see what we're talking about right now, since it is the darkest area of New Jersey. And we have telescopes located throughout that whole area, as a matter of fact. And it's a consortium of various kinds of amateur astronomy clubs throughout New Jersey. So it's really not a club. It's a consortium of clubs that become members in order to use the facilities that we have there. We can sleep overnight there, as a matter of fact, because, there are these amateur astronomers that are really involved in astrophotography as well.
Oh, yeah, and we're going to talk so much about that and many other topics here. I know you and I today, the audience doesn't know this, of course, but we'll share it. We were discussing these new AI telescopes. What's that? So you can set up this little device that looks a little fatter in the side, much thicker, I should say, the appropriate way to say it, than an iPad. And when you put it on a little tripod, they only cost sometimes $500, maybe $1,000 if you go to the extreme one. But you put it there, and it has this little control from your cell phone, your smartphone, and it takes images of the night sky, folks, even for city dwellers, And it does what they call, in the technical version, it gets out all the haze, and it creates some of the most amazing pictures. So let's say you're in a fairly light polluted area. It has the basic technology to show you the deep sky, maybe not as good as a super dark sky, but I think that's fascinating, and we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. So as we almost approach the bottom of the hour in radio, the hard break as we call it, I'd like to just one more time make that appeal. So if you're listening to us, the far-reaching sound and signal of Talk Radio 77 WABC, this would be my dream, Doctor. Somebody's outside at the campsite and they're listening to this radio station. And they're doing it old school on the power of AM radio, so important still in today's world.
Oh, yes.
And guess what? And they're calling in, as they will, and they're saying, I'm out there looking up into the heavens, and Dr. Sky, we're sharing this with Dr. Herico and your questions and comments because, hey, you never know. You might see a big fireball or a meteor. Or, for those that are in the East Coast, remember what happened, as you know, Carl, that whole experience with UAPs and all unidentified flying objects. I'm not laughing at that. It's just that we still don't have an answer to it. So much more, ladies and gentlemen. We come back here on the Dr. Sky Experience, wishing you and each and every one of you sincerely, from all of us to all of you, the entire staff, and to everybody listening, the best for a healthy and happy 4th of July weekend. And I'm kind of thinking that many of you are out there listening right now. We're just waiting to hear from you. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
33 minutes after the hour. Thank you, Dr. Tholen, as we continue to discuss many of the things that are the mysteries of the universe, from everything from astronomy, space, the UAP and UFO phenomenon. Your questions and comments here at 1-800-848-9222. Something from the quote category: two things are infinite, the universe and human stupidity, and I'm not sure about the universe, end quote, by the famous Albert Einstein. Dr. Herico, this is awesome. We've got a full board of callers here, and I think these individuals have lots of things to say to us. Let's say good morning and happy 4th of July weekend to you, Ted in Forest Hills. You're on the air.
Hi. Thank you. May I ask, could you please explain the Keck telescope, or why does light have a speed limit, and what is entanglement? Maybe you could choose one of them, please.
Well, go ahead, Doctor. Well, you can jump on those. They were fast given to us, so stay with us, Ted, in case we have to ask you to repeat one of the comments. Go ahead there.
Okay, got you. Yes, certainly.
Doctor, please.
Okay, we're talking about three different topics here, and let's see. Well, when you mention entanglement, that's part of quantum physics, and I don't know how much you've read about information regarding quantum physics, but there are various processes that they've given labels to, because that's what we do. We give labels to various types of phenomena, and one of them is entanglement, as you mentioned, where if one particle moves a certain way, then somehow it influences another matching particle at a distance in the same way. And we don't know how that takes place. At least I don't know how that takes place, and I haven't come across any information so far in terms of the mechanism behind that process. But
it's amazing.
It's a whole new strange world. It's like Alice in Wonderland. And they can't explain how these different types of phenomena occur. They've got no way through mathematics of explaining it either. And one of the problems is to bring the phenomenon of gravity in line with quantum physics. They haven't discovered how to do that yet. So gravity is still a problem in terms of a fundamental force in our universe. So there's a lot of unexplained things, obviously.
Well, there are, and I want to jump in, Ted, here. I know you had a couple of other concerns, too, but the entanglement thing, in my mind, would be something like this, Doctor. If you had, let's say, a light switch on one side of the universe, let's say the Milky Way galaxy, in the simplistic way, if that was a force, I'm using just the simple thing of a switch, instead of traveling at the speed of light would take you 150,000 years, the diameter of a galaxy, Ted, then it would be done instantaneously. That is a very, very strange phenomenon. Ted, you had a couple of others. I don't think we caught those. Please continue.
Well, why does the speed of light have a limit? Is that known? And what's with the Keck telescope? Is that hot stuff? Please?
Doctor?
Well, the speed of light has a limit, because if it didn't, then we'd have no way of determining what is happening in the universe, and looking at various phenomena regarding the idea of the speed of light wouldn't make any sense at all. It wouldn't be able to take place without there being a limit to the speed of light, which, as you know, probably is 186,000 miles per second. We don't notice that because in our world of existence, it's moving so quickly through a short space that we're viewing that we can't discern its actual speed. But long distances, of course, it makes a difference. And
well, I gotta jump in here. Sorry to cut you short, Doctor, but Ted, think of it this way. Just an additional bit of info here. The speed of light in 1 minute, light travels 11 million miles. So if you want to do the computation of the speed of light in miles per hour, we say it often, and it's almost, it's incredible. 670 million miles an hour, which is just faster than anybody's Tesla Plaid or fast motorcycle or even our conventional chemical rockets. So that's bizarre. But, Doctor, I think the gentleman, Ted, is asking about the Keck telescope. You're talking about what, Ted, the ground-based Keck, or you're not talking about the James Webb?
Yeah, I answered the phone once, and the person said, "My name is Mr. Keck." And I said, "You mean like a telescope?" Wasn't that a good one?
Well, go ahead, Doctor, because the Keck telescope is a ground-based telescope. But go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Doctor, explain that.
Thank you.
Now, what do you want to know about the Keck telescope exactly?
Why is it so hot? Why is it even mentioned? Why do I know the name?
Maybe you're related.
The Air Force pilot. Retired.
There you go.
Well, it's one of the most famous telescopes, and one of the first that was introduced in the past that was able to observe, image, of course, take photos of objects that were not able to be accessed before the Keck-based telescope, which had the best optics of that time. But since then, there's been a lot of other telescopes that have been introduced, and now especially the orbiting telescopes, space telescopes, are well above our atmosphere, not affected by a telescope which is land-based, a terrestrial telescope like the Keck, which was at that time very high up, so that it would be looking only through a very small portion of the atmosphere that would be thinner than those other terrestrial telescopes down lower, like Mount Palomar and so forth. So
Yes.
At that time, it was the best type of telescope to get the best out of any kind of astronomic viewing and information about what's up there in the sky. Now we have, as I mentioned, the orbiting telescopes, and now we get a lot more information in terms of all the wavelengths of light, infrared.
Well, Ted,
ultraviolet.
excuse me for jumping in here, but we're going to have to run here, Ted. But I want to mention one more thing. In all the great technical terms that astronomers have, these fancy terms, entanglement and such, one of the largest telescopes, Doctor, as you know, we were talking about it before, and this is interesting, Ted, and everybody listening, the ELT, Extremely Large Telescope. What a simple name for something that'll be in Chile that has probably a 150-foot mirror, and that becomes a whole nother story. Ted, your questions are awesome, and so we appreciate you. So have a good 4th of July weekend, sir. Let's continue on. The caller board is full, as we would expect, in such great topics. Let's say good morning to Frank in New Jersey. You're on with Dr. Carl Herico.
Gentlemen, is there black matter surrounding Uranus?
Wow. Now, there you go. Is that Henny Youngman or is that a Rodney Dangerfield line? I don't know.
And does he want an answer?
Yes.
He wants an answer?
I think so. It's nothing like humor that it livens programs. Isn't that true? That's amazing.
Oh, of course. A little bit of levity in life.
Well, I think Frank has moved out into the cosmos. Let's say good morning to Jeff in New Jersey, if you're with us. Good morning. And I don't know if you have one to top the last caller, but give us what you have in a dialogue.
Good morning, doctors. I am a former student of Union County College, And I do remember going there to the observatory many, many years ago, and I just wanted to know, do they still have tours there like they used to have years ago on Friday nights?
Hey, describe your face. I may have seen you. No, I'm only joking.
And remember, Doctor, this is theater of the mind here, so go ahead.
Okay. So describe what? I'm sorry. Describe what about Union County College and the observatory?
I was a former student and alum. I taught there for a while, and they used to have the observatory open on like Friday nights many years ago. Do they still have that? Do you know?
Yes, they still have the observatory open, and they also have, as Dr. Sky mentioned, the Amateur Astronomer Incorporated, where I probably first met him without knowing he was Dr. Sky.
That's right. I was just a 12-year-old kid in search of knowledge, and you probably helped me. Thank you.
I hope so.
Well, Jeff, no, this is interesting because what I'm hearing here is this whole great bastion for knowledge, this location is still around, and that's great because I would imagine in areas that have light pollution, there is still, as we're hearing, great locations to explore the universe, whether it's the moon, safe solar viewing, or whatever. But, Jeff, I'm sorry, you had more of a question or comment beyond that? Because we're going to move on if you don't.
That was just my question, that they still have tours there on the evenings on Friday nights, and it's something that I'd be interested in checking out again, and maybe I'll see one of your doctors there.
Well, that's very nice of him to call in. We appreciate that. You know, folks, I just want to mention, too, that if we haven't gotten to you yet, as we come up to the next break here in just a moment or two, we will do our best to listen, because I think that's the whole art of what? Conversation is to listen, and I think that's an important part of not only every show, but every facet of life. We learn something by listening in dialogue when we do communicate. But, Doctor, this is interesting, you know, talking about so many of the subjects. What I want to cover, we heard Dr. Tholen before in a promo. I had an opportunity to interview a number of years ago on the discovery of the asteroid, which is, and let's talk in correct terms, because you and I are not going to do yellow journalism. We're going to give facts out here. But it's incredible, in my opinion, and we could go on with a longer explanation of this after the break, maybe. Sometimes in media, and we look at this on the internet. Now, obviously, not everybody certainly believes everything they read. That would be ridiculous. But I have two little bones to pick. When we hear about asteroidal bodies, we hear so many stories about there's an asteroid the size of an aircraft carrier. There's even one crazy story, 4 times the height of Taylor Swift. I mean, serious. I read this, and it wasn't a joke. The point I'm making is very simple, and everybody would probably agree and smile and move on, is that, let's get it accurate, these asteroidal bodies, as we talk about later in the program, are not necessarily going to hit us anytime soon. That's what we hope, no guarantee. And the other thing that I'd like to talk about, and not to sound gripish here, is that so many times we hear more about this whole UFO phenomenon, and some of the journalists, of course, discount the possibility that this could be from other worlds and whatever. Doctor, I appreciate you, and if we haven't gotten you on the air, ladies and gentlemen, stay with us, please, as we move through this most amazing time in American history, the 249th birthday, as you know, of America's independence, here on Talk Radio 77 WABC, as we talk here with you on the Dr. Sky Experience. We'll be right back. Lots more to say.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The life of man is of no greater importance to the universe than that of an oyster, said a long time ago by someone you may know in history, Marcus Aurelius. 46 minutes after the hour, we continue with our special guest, not only in hour 1, but in hour number 2, with Dr. Carl Herico. Doctor, you're lighting up the phone lines here, and I'd like to go ahead and just go down the caller list here. You've been patient on the phone. We say good morning to Joe in New Jersey. How are you?
Hello. Yes, is it me?
I'm sorry, is this Joan? I apologize, Joan.
Yeah, hi, in Manhattan, not New Jersey.
Yes,
I'm wondering, you mentioned the tilt of the Earth, and is it my understanding that it is the tilt of the Earth that is responsible for what we call weather? And if you're on Mars, the only familiar thing about Mars, I think, would be the length of the day, right? The Mars turns on its axis every, 24 hours and 40 minutes, something like that.
About that. Yes, you're about right.
Yeah, which is very much like our day. But if Mars is not tilted, does that mean that it would have equal hours of light and darkness all year long? I mean, all of its year long, and everywhere on the planet, as opposed to what we have, which is where we just had the solstice, where we had almost 16 hours of sunlight, and the southern hemisphere had about 8 hours of sunlight. How would it be on Mars?
You bring up good questions, Joan. Doctor, we have somebody out there that's seeking answers.
Well, first of all, if you look at some kind of a diagram that displays the planets, you'll see that all the planets have a tilt to a certain degree. I don't believe there's any one of them that has its axis of rotation lined up with the idea of that line drawn perpendicular to its plane of orbit. And as a result, there are some seasons longer, shorter, but yet each one of them has some kind of a tilt. So that would modify your question or your expectation of an answer to your question somewhat, wouldn't it?
Yes, but I'm wondering, is the tilt, we have, 23 degree? You said,
23 and a half,
pun you made there. They're all tilted to a degree. How many degrees? We have quite a tilt, right? 23 and a half degrees.
That is correct.
Must be tilted a lot less, and if that were the case, would it have more equal hours of sun and darkness all year round and everywhere on the planet? What is the tilt on Mars? Do we know exactly?
Good question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'd have to check it. Wouldn't know offhand because it's hard to memorize everything. Yeah.
Well, Joan, let me say this. Here's a strange one in the solar system that I'm very fluent in, and here we go. Look at the planet Uranus, and again, to the audience, I pronounce it Uranus, and it has a 98-degree tilt on its axial, inclination.
Whoa.
So it's actually weird. It's actually rolling almost pole as you would see it. It's the strangest little thing. And it's not that little. It's this big methane planet. It just sits out there. It was discovered. Doctor, you know this. Doctor, the story of William Herschel, this is another story we could go into for hours. On March 13, 1781, he discovered what he called Uranus. And this particular planetary object was really not going to be named after these different Greek and Roman gods. He came up with an idea to call it Georgium Sidus in honor of King George. And all the astronomy people said, hell no, we're not going to have politics get into the naming of planets. But that's a strange one, Joan. Any other comment that you want to make before we move on?
No, I just want to say I love that quote from Albert Einstein about the two things that are infinite. But also I wanted to make a little side comment. If I'm not mistaken, the orbit of Pluto is just about 248 years, which means that we're celebrating the 249th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and that means that Pluto was just about where it is right now in the sky relative to the sun at that time when Jefferson published the Declaration of Independence. Is that correct?
Doctor, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Joan, hey, Doctor, if we were giving prizes on this radio show, I think she would be so far the most intriguing caller. Right.
Number one. As a matter of fact, if you lived on Pluto, you wouldn't have any birthdays.
Joan, before we say have a great weekend, in my college days, Dr. Tamba was my professor in college, the guy who discovered it. Now, here again, this is amazing. I know, Doctor, you know this. But February 18th, 1930, this little guy from Kansas, and I say little, he was a very small man, came with $20 from Kansas, good old Kansas boy. And he wanted to work at the Lowell Observatory here in Arizona. And they said, well, basically then, in the old days, well, why would we want to hire you? And he said, because I love the night sky and I want to be an astronomer. So he got a job from a guy named Vestos Slifer, sweeping the floors, doing and helping develop those big, like the old X-ray machines had those giant photographic plates. He worked, and finally he got the opportunity to discover, isn't it sad, Joan and Doctor, his planet has now become a dwarf. One of the biggest controversies in science, but we'll have to leave it at that. So, Joan, thank you. Boy, if we had prizes, maybe we ought to come up with some prizes, don't you think, folks?
Oh, okay. I'll accept it. Thank you.
Go. Thank you. You have a good weekend.
The prize is your response, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Blessings to you. Let's say hello to Joe in New Jersey as we move to the top of the hour. You're on with Dr. Carl Herico. How are you this morning?
Yes, hi, Doctor and Dr. Sky. I have a story about in 1970, I graduated high school, remembering about reading radio astronomy, and that was just starting when they found the Arneo and Penzias, the two fellows who founded that...
AT&T.
There you go. And that, what did they find in the universe? I forgot exactly. Arno Penzias and the other fellow. What was that big discovery?
Cosmic microwave background.
Background radiation. Exact. Yes. Anyhow, in high school, of course, sixth grade, we went to the Hayden Planetarium. Remember squeezing through the back entrance with the kids going in to see the sky show? Well, as it goes, I'm 72 now, and I married the daughter of the art director there in the planetarium when the Zeiss projector was still playing, its swirling star shows. Yes, he was.
Well, you know what, guys? Hey, before Doctor responds, we went there as kids because I'm a New Yorker. I was born in Jamaica, Queens. And we went there all the time. It was great. And we did the Natural History Museum. But my little sister, who was 3 years younger than me, and we were small, we went in and she couldn't stop crying and screaming because it looked like a giant ant or a monster, the projector.
Yes, it was very spooky, of course, if you're too young. But sixth grade, I unfortunately missed this 64 World's Fair, but that's another topic. Anyhow, his history there, he came out of Munich, Germany. Helmut Wimmer, Wimmer. If you look him up on the Google, you search and get his background. But he married, of course, came over to the country, and luckily the retiring person at the planetarium was just a German, also speaking person. He slid into this job in 1957-ish and worked until the 90s. And we still have fond memories. He is one of the first art directors who had a visual description of the black hole, and my question was, it's on the web, Helmut Wimmer, and is there a black hole in the center of our galaxy, or is there such a thing as a white hole? I don't know.
There's supposed to be a supermassive black hole, and I came across an astrophysicist, had the chance to interview him, who came up with the idea that also, besides the black hole, it might be possible that there's a wormhole there as well. And he kind of suggested that something like that should be searched for by looking for the behavior of stars nearby the center of the black hole, which is in the constellation, in a direction of the constellation Sagittarius.
You're right. And this is interesting, Joe. Before we hit the top of the hour here, I just wanted to mention, to add on to what Doctor's saying, this is interesting. It's called Sagittarius A star, like an asterisk next to it. And basically, it looks like it eats stars for breakfast and lunch, if there is such a thing. But, Doctor, I'm going to brag on you for all the listeners out there. Dr. Herico has a very interesting background, too. He's also a very successful podcaster. And you can go to Carl's Orbit as a podcast, right, Doctor, out there in cyberspace. And you've got a lot of other interesting interviews, too. So I'm bragging on you. There you go.
Well, thank you.
Yes. Hi. One more question.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering why they knocked down the old wasn't that a historical monument? And they put up the Rose Center for Art and Science. I don't know what it was, but I don't think they should have knocked that down. But, of course, that's way beyond my intelligence. So I was wondering why that was knocked down, and now it's all brand new and shiny.
As I understand it, they wanted to build a whole new kind of structure to represent astronomy a little better. And I believe who was involved in that, in the planning of the Rose Center for, I think it's called Rose Center because the Rose family funded it, of Earth and Space, I believe that's the name for it now. It was designed to a certain extent, and maybe completely, by the astronomer Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yes.
You're familiar with him.
Absolutely. Joe, thank you for being part of the show. We appreciate this as we talk about these subjects that, bragging on the good doctor here with his podcast, Carl's Orbit, and so many other things that maybe the great mysteries of the universe are unfolding right here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Folks, if you haven't gotten on and you're still in the caller queue, we will be welcoming you in hour number 2 as we continue to move through time and space. Thank you, Joe in New Jersey. It's nice to reminisce with people who remember the Hayden Planetarium and the large projector that looked like an ant out of a sci-fi movie. That's amazing. Here we go, Doctor. As we move into hour number 2, I want to ask you if you write these down because I might forget it. Let's talk about what Dr. Tholden was saying, the promo that we did before, about asteroid Apophis. I want to set the record straight on that because so many people are curious. On April the 13th, remember, file your taxes early, in 2029, an asteroid body some 1,450 feet long, larger than most big nuclear aircraft carriers in the American, naval portions of the world, is going to come exceptionally close to the Earth, even inside, right, Doctor? The geosynchronous 22,000-mile orbit of satellites around the Earth. It has a long, sordid history of people saying it will hit us and it won't hit us, but so much more when we come back here on the Dr. Sky Experience, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't gotten in, we promise we'll get you on the air here with your commentary, as we call it, dialogue, 1-800-848-9222. And I'm still waiting, Doctor, for somebody to call us who's actually outside some remote location or even a place where there's dark skies to converse with us, because theater of the mind needs some observational identity too. We'll be right back for hour number 2.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
At 3 minutes after the hour, we welcome you back to hour number 2 of a unique radio show, as you tell us, and that you tell us you like it. You can email me with your questions and comments all throughout the week, 24 hours a day at drsky@wabcradio.com. And we always suggest that you go back to our podcast archive and share that with new people who can become new callers and listeners, not only to this show, but to all the other great hosts, 24/7. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Sky at wabcradio.com. And you can also hear this particular archive at redappleaudionetworks.com. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Tony and Bill. They're the helmsmen that are making this radio show come to you, ladies and gentlemen, with the powerful signal of 77 WABC. No matter where you're listening or you'll call us, and it's sure, in my mind, the signal around the nation, around the world, and wow, even out to the cosmos. If you're just joining us, our special guest for these 2 hours is Dr. Carl Herico, a good friend of ours. His podcast is Carl's Orbit, some other interesting interviews that you can chime in on. And this is so interesting. The caller lines are hot. So let's say, as we go to my home state, let's welcome Tony in Phoenix. Good morning, Tony. Happy 4th of July weekend to you.
Hey, thank you, doctors. We always love listening to this Dr. Sky Experience on the 77 WABC radio. You folks brought up some of the bigger the telescopes, things like that to see, way out, Hubble telescope, et cetera, et cetera. I want to just relay something that we did back in the day when the family would, take the kids out, rent a motorhome, and just take our time driving up, here in the great state of Arizona, working our way up there toward the Kaibab Plateau on the north rim of the Grand Canyon.
Wow.
And when we get back in there and park at night, I mean, it was dark. There were no lights out there whatsoever. You know, we did stop by Lowell Observatory on the way up there too. You know, just to do a historical note on places, you know, where we'd been. Very, very, very nice place. But once we got to the Grand Canyon, I'll tell you, guys, it is dark, dark, dark when you're out there in the middle of the forest part of it. And then you can see the Milky Way from horizon to horizon, if you can see, you know, through the trees. And those lights just brighten and light up the ground to where you can see everything.
Well, Tony, this is interesting. Let's hope and pray you did a good segue on this, and it's really important. But I'm saying, for everybody who's never experienced that, we're not in the tourist business. Maybe we should get some sponsors to do that. But the reality is, Doctor, let's hope that these conditions exist around the country, not just here in Arizona. But Dr. Herico, this is interesting what Tony's talking about. I mean, you mentioned in the areas of New Jersey, there are still some places to view. So we don't want to have people think, oh, this is a turnoff. I can never get out to the beautiful Grand Canyon. There are still places that you can go. But Tony, you say it so well. So I want the doctor to respond.
One more thing, Steve. Because I followed you quite a lot. A lot of other people have too. I mean, the Dr. Guy experience has been around for a while, and it's still going to be here for a long time from now. You were involved in, I think it was called the Sophia, when they took a big airliner and had like a huge telescope in that thing.
Yes, I was on there many times. We did a little documentary on this.
Of going into orbit?
Yeah. Well, no. It was a 747 SP, which, in case people don't know, it was the shorter version of the 747, a very interesting aircraft. At the time, it was meant to fly longer duration missions. Now they have the Dreamliner, which can outpace that for distance traveled. So they put $100 million telescope on board, 100-inch, and we'd go up as journalists for these 12-hour missions. So you'd go from Lancaster, California. We'd fly up by the North Pole and come back to the same place. But believe me, after a while, it's almost like you're in a spaceship, because those missions, we zigzagged across the country. What were they doing? So everybody understands quickly. We were flying at about 47,000 feet above the water vapor of the Earth, as much as you could get up into the stratosphere. And we'd be sitting there in front of these big computer consoles. I wasn't doing this, but we were just talking to the people, imaging things in the heavens. But Dr. Herico, to talk about what Tony's talking about, what I wanted to get to, what Tony's main point about these places like the Great Grand Canyon, but there are other places that people can experience this if they're not able financially or even physically to travel to those locations, as great as they are.
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, there's places that have been set up specifically for amateur astronomers. For example, Stellafane is a place they go, tent out and bring their telescopes with them in order to observe the sky at night. I went to one of these in the past, and I had my tent, of course, and I had to get up middle of the night to take care of some business. Mm-hmm. And as I stepped out of the tent, I looked up in the sky, and I couldn't recognize any constellation. There were so many stars in the sky.
That's right.
Right. Unbelievable. Well, I mean, the whole sky was the Milky Way. Good grief. It was amazing. So there are places all over the whole country. And in New Jersey, less and less, unfortunately. And, of course, I'm sure there's places in New York State as well that are dark skies.
There are, gentlemen, and I wish there were more time. Tony, in Arizona, we appreciate you and your perspective on the Grand Canyon. Thank you, and hope you'll continue to be with us on the Dr. Sky Experience. I want to get as many callers on before I go back to the topics that I wanted you and I to discuss about the asteroid Apophis and some other things. So let's welcome John in Long Beach. You've been patient. Good morning. You're on the Dr. Sky Experience.
Yeah, it's Don from Long Beach. Good evening, gentlemen.
Yes.
I had called about this once before, but based on your comments concerning how unique the Earth is, I just want to, I have two comments. The first one being that there seems to be evidence of a creator. If you take the human mind and you take all the natural resources we have on this unique planet, there's, I don't know if you call it a symbiosis, but there's a relationship between the mind and the resources. You can build just about anything. I mean, we build spacecraft. We have the resources to create rocket fuel. I was just driving in my car, and I'm looking at the pavement, the rubber tires. It's almost like somebody gave us all of this material, and we do, what we need to do with it. And you're not going to find that on any other planet. And I wanted to also add, I don't think, unless we can terraform a planet, I don't think that we can really escape Earth. Unless you terraform another planet, we always have to come back to Earth for something. I just wanted to hear your comments on that.
Doctor, I think John brings up some amazing points here, but the terraforming thing, I would think that's really in the far future. I mean, we're not even able to get chemical rockets to Mars yet. But, Doctor, please continue as what John is requesting in his analysis.
Well, the astronomers and other scientists are planning in order to go to other kind of celestial objects like Mars as a planet and maybe the moon and so on and so forth, to look for areas that are located below the ground so we have some protection against radiation and incoming objects of sorts. And so they would be looking for maybe different sorts of volcanic passageways and vents beneath the ground, things of that nature, that they could maybe build some kind of habitat of sorts in which, and these things are on the planning board as well, in which they would provide a certain amount of atmospheric conditions that simulate those on Earth. Heating, you have to control temperature, atmospheric, as I mentioned, atmospheric conditions. You have to have some control over lighting, things of that nature. So all these things would have to be developed under circumstances like that. Now, in the meantime, though, before these things can be built, you can set up things temporarily, and you can have recycling where people come and go rather than remain there for long periods of time. And even at that, even if there were some kind of habitats built below the ground and maybe somehow above the ground, I imagine it would be best if they did have some kind of a cycling system where the people who live there would recycle back to Earth again over a certain period of time and then return until we find some way maybe to prevent some kind of injuries and diseases occurring, because they've been finding bacteria in space that are not terrestrial.
Oh, yeah, on the Chinese space station and also somewhat on the International Space Station. But in due respect to the callers, John, you get the last word if you're still with us. We're going to move through time and space here, so you're on still.
He mentioned that. Yeah, recently we were talking about Apollo 12, where they retrieved some material from the Surveyor spacecraft, and I was reading about that, and they found, and you can check this to make sure I'm saying the correct thing here. They found staph bacteria on the Surveyor. Probably was taken from Earth, I guess.
It was.
But who knows?
Yes. You know, Pete Conrad, he was one who wanted to land. They actually, if you heard, hopefully everybody listening heard our special interview that we had with the software designer, Don Isles. And if you haven't heard that, go to our podcast archive. What he did say to me, and this is where I got my information from, Pete Conrad wanted to land that particular Apollo 12 better than they were off by about 4 miles with Apollo 11. People didn't know that. Now it comes out. But the point is, he did walk. He was in walking distance of a Surveyor, and you're right. They found something which was probably pre-contamination, right, Doctor? They didn't have the clean room as clean maybe as they wanted, but it even grew.
No, it's very hard to eliminate all types of germs from contaminating any of the different kinds of equipment that they bring up, even on the spacecraft itself. Very hard to eliminate everything. As a matter of fact, it might be almost impossible to do so at this point in the space program, at any rate.
Well, we'll have to talk some other time, John, in Long Beach, about what they found on the Tiangong Chinese space station. Thank you for calling us, and have a great 4th of July weekend. As we move to the next caller, we say good morning to Max in Manhattan. How are you this morning?
Thank you. I'm well. Thank you, Dr. Sky. Thank you for taking my call.
Always.
Some years ago, there was a at a water park where the whales were being fed, and this was in Florida. Unfortunately, the woman who was feeding the whales, the whales would jump up many feet in the air, snatch the fish from her hand, and then dive back in. So on this one occasion, unfortunately, they grabbed her by her ponytail. They flung her up in the air and then smashed her into the water. She died, unfortunately.
Oh, how sad.
But this could have been about 10 years ago. And for some reason, I wanted to look up the constellation that was above them in Florida at that time. And so I set on the Redshift software, the geography and the coordinates.
Yes.
And ironically enough, it was the constellation of Cetus, the whale.
Oh, yeah. The whale. Yeah. How interesting. That's one of the big constellations. You can't really see much of it. I know both the good doctor and I, we look at our sky. But no, that's amazing that you found that and put it all together. But again, I'm going to say this to everybody, Max, and you're on right with us right now. People can go to just skymaps.com if they want to get this little free printout. You just print it out, and here's why I think it's important, because not everybody, utilizes the smartphone, because why? It can be a little bit of a pain in the backside if you're holding it up and you're looking at a dark sky, unless you dim it out red. But Max, what I'm saying here and to the audience is that it shows all these little constellations that are visible within a calendar month, and I find it amazing, Doctor and Max, that there's so many constellations. We could do shows about them. And in the southern hemisphere, you have some of the strangest constellations. There's a fly in the southern hemisphere called Musca. There's actually a water clock called Horologium. And, Doctor, isn't that amazing? The southern hemisphere has all these, mechanical devices. And if you really look, I can't see a water clock or whatever the heck, a fly out of those stars. But maybe most people can't see any of the symbology of the constellations other than maybe Scorpius or the Big Dipper, part of the Big Bear. Thank you so much for being with us, John. We appreciate you. Doctor, this is interesting. I wanted to get to before we hit the bottom of the hour. Let's talk about, from your perspective, this Apophis, the Egyptian war god. This asteroid. Imagine this big chunk of material, whether it's rock or nickel iron, hurtling in its orbit. A very strange orbit indeed. And again, I don't want to go after journalism and, attack a lot of people here. Certainly that's not my mission. But the whole point of the matter is we get these alarms. We had one of these come up with 2024 YR4 in the past, 2024, that there's a percentage that this asteroid is going to hit the Earth. So realistically, folks, we can all calm down here. Unless there's one out of the dark and the deep of the blue of the nighttime sky, a bolt out of the blue, this Apophis is going to pass us. It would be a spectacular thing to see with the naked eye, but it won't look anything like a big chunk of metal going over your house. So carry on, Doctor. This Apophis, we don't want to scare people. It has 2 or 3% chance of coming back to the Earth in 2037 after 2029. I think we're out of the woods. What say you?
I think the same thing, as a matter of fact, because, like you say, in order to sell the information in the form of a magazine or a newspaper, the information has to be somewhat spectacular. Mm-hmm. And going back to some words said by Carl Sagan, extraordinary claims requires extraordinary evidence.
Well said.
And that applies to this situation as well as to what topic you had mentioned before that we might get into shortly, the unidentified flying objects. But in any case, I wouldn't worry about anything occurring like the asteroid striking us. And that's another area that's interesting, I suppose, Dr. Sky, the notion of what an asteroid is and where they're primarily located, why are they located, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. 1-800-848-9222 if you'd like to join the dialogue, because we certainly don't want to get into a discourse or a diatribe or, well, tonight is not the night or the morning for any debate, because we love dialogue. Your questions and comments are important to us on these topics with the Dr. Carl Herico. His podcast, as many times we'll mention, we'll brag on him, is Carl's Orbit. Great interviews that he has had and I'm sure will continue to have. But let's talk about another one of these objects that's in the news lately. It kind of faded for a while. Object Asteroid 2024 YR4, the letter Y, R and the number 4. We talked about it here on Talk Radio 77 WABC back in October and November. And, Doctor, there was a higher percentage at the time that this asteroidal body would strike the Earth on December the 22nd of 2032, I believe, or 2031, 2032. Forgive me for not knowing the exact date. And now what they're saying is that it has a small percentage of striking the surface of the moon, which is no consolation prize by any means, because it would have the effective force. The object is fairly large, not as big as 1,450 feet, but certainly not small, to create what would be like a nuclear type of explosion on the moon if it happened on the front side, and maybe if it happened on the far side. But it could also, say astronomers, some 10% of that ejecta could wind up in an orbital path to come into the Earth, giving us one of the best meteor storms in recorded history. What say you?
Well, if that interpretation were true, then we'd have to be concerned about some of the larger pieces that might have been or may be broken off from the moon when the asteroid allegedly is supposed to hit. And maybe that may not even occur, as a matter of fact. Maybe the asteroid on its way in that path toward the moon might be struck by some other material in space and divert its pathway so that it misses the moon. And hopefully misses us as well. But no, I don't think we have to worry too much about the ejecta coming from the moon when, and if it's struck by this asteroid that we're speaking about. I'd wait until further kinds of determination and measurements are made in order to determine its actual path, because not only can these objects be diverted by striking other objects in space, but also our determination in terms of what kind of models we use to determine its actual path might be modified and improved upon.
Well, you're right. We have new telescopes. If people think they have these great cameras with super megapixels on them, and they do. The giant, Rubin telescope, it's really a photographic camera, and it can detect these objects, hopefully, that they don't strike the Earth. But how about this? Let's talk about exceptional stories of asteroidal impacts, and we're not going to talk about the 65 million year ago Chicxulub. How about this? Whoa. Let's go to June 30th, 1908. I wasn't there. Many people weren't there. But guess what? Out of the sky, out of the clear blue sky in the northern portion of Siberia, you probably know well about this, Tunguska. This object ripped the sky apart, Doctor, with a sound, according to those people that survived it. There were just a few trappers there. There were herds of reindeer. The object allegedly was probably in the order of maybe, now we're saying 200 feet. Was it nickel iron? We don't know. Was it a rocky composite that broke apart? Here's what we do know. It airburst 4 miles or so above this area called Tunguska. 800 square miles, folks. I'll repeat it. 800 square miles of trees were incinerated like that of the nuclear explosion. In relativistic terms, it was stated, though we don't know this for sure, the explosive impact there was that of about a 30 megaton nuclear explosion. Quite big. And that is incredible because they say, who's they, that if the object either happened earlier or later, London, England would have been in the flight path. That's amazing. So that's bizarre stuff. I know you know about this. And then let's go to Arizona, my home state, 50,000 years ago when none of us were here. A 200-foot diameter piece of nickel iron slammed into a place in Arizona where we have a mild meteor crater. Have you ever been there, Doctor, that one, in near Flagstaff? Have you been there?
Yes, I have. As a matter of fact, I and my family have been there twice. And it's interesting to compare the two times that we've been there. The first time, it was a tourist attraction where there were a series of signs on the way there on the highway indicating we're getting closer, and it's so far away, and then it's closer, so far, and so forth. And we got there, and it was a typical kind of tourist place. They were selling various kinds of ejecta from the impact. The second time, though, making the comparison, now it really became commercialized. And
it has. And the Barringer family, who actually claimed had a stake in it, they thought that they could mine meteors out of it, but more of it was explosive force. There was very little residual. But I've stood there and I hope everybody, listening, if they haven't been there, that's a great, tour to do on any bucket list for life. But when you stand there, it's about a mile or so crater, fresh in the sense that 50,000 years ago in cosmic time is a little bit of time. But the interesting thing is they said if they ever wanted to make, like we have the Phoenix Cardinals here, of course, and they built this big, magnificent stadium like other great cities with their teams. And the Bidwell family at one time, of course, working out the deals. They fit, 70,000 or more, maybe somewhat bigger than that in fans. But the question was asked, if you actually carved out and put seats inside the big meteor crater, how many seats allegedly could you put in there?
Oh,
Doctor, 1 million people could go in there. But you know what? I don't think I'd want to stand in the line. And if they had the hot dog and the drink prices too high, that would be a turnoff. But you'd probably have the world's worst traffic jam getting in and out, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh, Dr. Sky, the comparison I wanted to mention, the second time we were there, I knew it was commercialized when I saw T-shirts outside being sold. At that point, once you spot T-shirts, you know it.
Yes. And I don't know the name of this. Forgive me, folks. Maybe somebody smarter than myself can check this out. But as I hope to be married soon to my lovely fiancée, Diana, if she's listening, instead of me getting some sort of a diamond, that's not in my wheelhouse, not that I don't like them, there's actually, and I have to look this up again, there's actually something they found that is like a diamond that's in that crater, and it has a certain name. And you can actually lab create these, but it's beautiful because it has the luster of a diamond. There's lab created diamonds that are beautiful. But whatever the name is, forgive me, folks, but that would be one that I would like to have because, I'm kind of a little bit biased on the side of stuff from the heavens, don't you think, guys?
Oh, definitely, you should.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
We'll talk about here in a few minutes. We go to this hard break, as we always do here at the bottom of the hour. Just talk more about this because the objects that we talked about are, we don't want to scare people. I mean, that's why we do shows like this. It's not a broadcast. And believe me, if it was coming, we want to be the first to break the news, but talk about it from science. But the probability is what, Doctor? We're not in any harm directly unless something comes from the back edge of the sun and it hits us like a bolt out of the blue. But for now, they got a pretty good track record on following these. Would you not agree?
Oh, definitely. No doubt about that. Definitely.
Yeah.
Not to
worry.
worry.
That is interesting. Yeah, so everybody can rest and enjoy their holiday weekend. 1-800-848-9222. We're still looking for somebody who's out there in the vast radio audience here at the Theater of the Mind that we're doing right now. But how about some eyes on the skies? No pun intended. So if you're out there and you're taking a look, no matter where you are, you could be in the New York City area, you could be across the country, who knows, maybe even out to the great state of Hawaii, where maybe it's not even dark yet. Who knows? But we'd love to hear from you, ladies and gentlemen, on this particular archive, the Dr. Sky Experience, with great guests, in case you're a first-time listener. Maybe you'll be a first-time caller. We like that, too. We talk about astronomy, space, aviation. We talk about celebrity guests. We talk with you about great American stories of American exceptionalism, and especially as we did in our program 24 hours or so ago, talking about great stories about American independence, what it means, and the question that was posed to everybody is, what is being an American to you? Tell us. That's an interesting story. We'll be right back after these important announcements with more on the Dr. Sky Experience and you in our conversations in the form of dialogue.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The universe is under no obligation to make sense to you. A quote from Neil deGrasse Tyson. 31 minutes after the hour, and let me say this from the bottom of my heart. I miss you, Al Lewis, a great friend, and to everybody listening here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. We know his great part, not only in Car 54, Where Are You?, but also, of course, with the great television series, The Monsters. Isn't that amazing, Doctor? I mean, what a guy. I couldn't stop laughing when we interviewed him. He was just so amazing. And I understood he had a home somewhere, I think in Roosevelt Island, right there in Manhattan. And, he was active in radio, even in the city, I think, on some other stations. He ran for what? I think he ran for governor. Amazing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's amazing. So anyway, let's continue. No, let's continue here to discuss some of these other great topics that we have here on my list, and maybe you have a list too. But we're finding out that the Voyager 2 is going to be one light day out into the universe by November of 2026. So that in itself is amazing because we remember, most of us, I have some recollections, 1977, when Voyager 1 and 2 departed and moved out to the universe. But if I have it wrong, I think it's Voyager 1, if I misstated here. It'll be one light day. So remember before we were saying what? Light travels in 1 minute 11 million miles, and its speed is 670 million miles an hour. That's incredible that an American or any country's spacecraft is still functioning as it moves one light day out into the universe.
Yes, it certainly is. It's hard to wrap your mind around something like that involving the idea that we don't see those photons coming from those objects until many, many years later.
That's incredible. Yeah, that's something because they had some issues. I mean, we even interviewed somebody who did the golden record on there. The gentleman lives in Hawaii, and he and Carl Sagan, of course, put together this big old size. Remember when vinyl records, the big 12-inch, I think was, that's on the side. So if any intelligence out there picks it up, it has all kinds of stuff on there done and recorded in the most bizarre way. It has a photo album, right? It has all kinds of sounds of the Earth and all kinds of things that are going on. That's way out in space.
Yeah,
I think the color line. Oh yeah, I think the color line is still hot, and I hopefully have it right. It's Roman in Pennsylvania. Good morning. You're on the Dr. Sky Experience. How are you?
Yeah, Mr. Herico. What do you call an orgy between planets?
Here we go. Radio silence. There you go.
Yes, I have to that one carefully.
Well, anyway, do you have another commentary that you want to give us as far as a science topic other than that? Or we'll move on. Well, there you go. You had your opportunity there. But again, this is so interesting. When we talk about what's going on in the heavens here, this to me is even more bizarre. We look out into the deep darkness of space, and what we find out here is recently we had another nova appear in the heavens. So if people are not familiar with this, when stars collapse or explode, depending on what the nature is of the event, there's a little nova. I watched it in a pair of binoculars. Nothing to get too excited about, and somebody may take exception to that because all nova are important. But it was in a constellation in the southern sky here, very low in Phoenix sky. It's called Lupus. And if you look at the derivation of lupus, it's supposed to be a wolf. But if you look back into the history of Greek and Roman astronomy, we find out that lupus was like half an animal with a human head on it, just like a centaur. But what are we talking about here, Doctor? We're talking about an object that literally either collapsed or had material drawn off a big star to a white dwarf, and then the whole thing went shebang. But the reason I get into this is interesting. The brightest supernova that we know of in recorded history, and I wanted you to comment on this, back in May of 1006 AD, in the same region where this little nova is now, one apparently was as bright as a 3/4 moon in the sky, visible throughout all parts of the world, and even here in Arizona, these petroglyph rocks may have even depicted it as a story. Can you imagine the brilliance of something like that? We haven't had one like that in a long, long time. Amazing, right?
Yeah, I believe that was in 1054, and you were talking about this before, mentioning it regarding and relating to Chinese astronomers recording the explosion of that.
Well, that was another one, but the one I'm talking about seriously is May of 1006 AD, if people look it up. But I'm saying that was even brighter than this Chinese nova that we talk about now. That, to me, is just off the charts. Imagine something like that. That's incredible. We haven't had anything like that to awaken our senses in a long time. But tell us about the one in 1054. Please continue.
Oh, no, it was a supernova, not a nova. There's a difference between the two because a nova is a star that can have that explosion recur over and over, maybe over several thousands of years, but still, it isn't the end of that star. It's the idea of that star exploding because usually in a nova situation or condition, two stars are involved, binary star system. And one star is a large star, ordinarily maybe a red giant star, and the other one that is more dense, compact, has more of a gravitational attraction is called a white dwarf. So the white dwarf will suck in the material from the largest star, which covers the white dwarf's atmosphere, and then it flares up, explodes like a thermonuclear explosion, but it doesn't eliminate the star so that it can recur again until eventually the star is completely demolished and all of the star's makeup simply goes out into the interstellar space, maybe to become again another star in the future if it goes into an area that is acting like a nursery for stars, because as you know, stars are born, stars live, and stars die, so to speak.
Yes, everything has a life cycle, and as the great Carl Sagan once said, we are made of what? Stardust and star stuff, to be more precise, because it's amazing. And that conundrum is so amazing, because I'm sitting here at a desk, a microphone, we're doing our thing here, we have lights in this little tiny studio that I work out of. But the thing is, everything around you, folks, is made from this material, from the creation of the universe. And the strangest thing, I know you'd probably, you and I talked off air about this, but to share it with the audience, the Big Bang Theory, which simply states maybe 13.7 or 8 billion years ago, out of this tiny, infinitesimally small dot came everything now. Now there's challenge to the theory saying that may not have been the way we think, or at least that's not accurate. And what is one of the new theories? It has something to do with the black hole origin for the universe, and this could be all over in multiverses.
I suppose you would mention the idea of one hypothesis being the formation of many smaller black holes, and then it's continued in another version by somebody else in terms of the black holes occurring in waves over periods of time, so that there's a series of black holes occurring that's producing the energy necessary to accelerate and expand the universe. In this case, you would need an explanation using the idea of dark matter and dark energy. So it gets rid of dark matter and dark energy being necessary to produce the energy causing expansion and acceleration of the universe.
Yes, so, fascinating and very, very complicated. It's so incredible. I mean, we studied this. It seems like, Doctor, every day, I mean, if you go scour the internet, and we don't always believe everything, but so much information is just hitting us right now. It's like an information revolution beyond any of our expectations. It's so hard to keep up with this. So the great subjects of quantum physics, imagine that, folks, delving deeper and deeper into the atom, in which we look at electrons or neutrons as, let's say, they were the size of buildings, and these little substrates that are even going deeper, maybe the size of an ant or the size of bacteria, or even way deeper than that. This is so bizarre. I think we're on the precipice of some amazing discoveries. Obviously, that's the understatement.
Oh, definitely. No doubt about that. There's always going to be something out there that we don't know about and find out about and redefine our positions and models, paradigms, and so forth.
Yes. Let's make that appeal one more time. There's still plenty of time to jump in on this dialogue. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. And we're appealing to people that may be outside, across the far and wide broadcast area of Talk Radio 77 WABC. And I would imagine I wouldn't do this during the winter so much. Why not? Because most people, as they celebrate the 4th of July weekend, you're probably out there. And in my mind, there's somebody sitting around a campfire or they're out in the dark skies. We want to hear from you, too. Don't you think, Doctor?
Oh, definitely, yes. For anybody who is interested in observing and finding out more information about the various phenomenon dealing with celestial objects, and even beyond that, as a matter of fact, I know that you mention things from time to time, Dr. Sky, not only involving what we ordinarily put into the category of astronomy, but also Earth phenomenon. And Earth is a planet in our solar system. It's part of astronomy as well.
It is. And there's so many mysteries under the ocean. Think about that for subject matter for other times in the future. Then we talk about the deepest part of the ocean. That's Mariana Trench. If you went to the bottom and put Mount Everest there would still be a heck of a lot of water on top of the height of Mount Everest. And those areas, that's totally amazing what's under the ocean. And we talk about, as we have in the past, about noise pollution with great guests and scientists. And it's amazing. So you never know, Doctor, what's going on.
Dr. Sky, if I may, I came across information involving one of our past astronauts who went to the moon and returned, Scott Carpenter. You were talking about what's up in the sky and what's in the ocean. Well, he followed that path. After returning to Earth as an astronaut, he became an aquanaut and went below into the ocean to discover what was there.
That's amazing. I think he was on something called Sea Lab, and you're very fortunate in your archive podcast, Carl's Orbit. I know that's one of the interviews that you had with him, and that's a real honor because these are the greats, the Wally Shiraz, the Scott Carpenters, and the people that you described there. It's just so incredible. Folks, there's still time, 1-800-848-9222 as we go to the top of the hour of Hour 2. And if we haven't gotten you on, hang on, folks. John in Boulder, Colorado, and many others to come. We're just around the corner from another one of our breaks. But this is fascinating. You're a podcast, Carl's Orbit. You've been doing this for a long time. You bring together a compilation of great scientists and people, of course, in the know. And that's important out there for not only the young out there, but well-seasoned seniors who obviously have a lot of historical knowledge from either prior service in the military and much more with our very special guest, Dr. Carl Herico, and your comments and questions here on the Dr. Sky Experience. Look up at the stars and not down at your feet. Try to make sense of what you see and wonder about what makes the universe exist. Be curious. A quote from the late and great Dr. Stephen Hawking. 47 minutes after the hour, we continue, ladies and gentlemen, discussing things that are otherworldly and above us. As we go about our busy days, our lives ruled by the sun, we now talk about the mysteries of the universe. And let's welcome John in Boulder, Colorado, at the foothills of the Rocky Mountains.
Hey, Dr. Sky, how you doing?
Good, my friend. How are you?
Hey, I'm out here sitting out back, and I'm kind of in South Boulder. I'm not right downtown, but it gets pretty dark right here where I'm at.
Yes.
And we have a really huge full moon tonight. It's like crystal clear.
Beautiful night.
And when you go outside of Boulder, you go out in the rural areas and stuff, it's very dark out there, and you can see all kind of stuff at night.
You bet.
Meteors, shooting stars. I guess you sat long enough, you might see a UFO. I don't know, but
you never know, especially with the dark sky.
Up here.
Yeah, that's great.
And I heard you talking about Scott Carpenter. The Scott Carpenter's Park is about a 20-minute walk from my house. So It's pretty amazing. He was an astronaut.
Oh, yeah.
But, and it's good to hear your show. I hope everybody's doing all right out there. And just thought I'd let you know it's pretty nice out in Colorado, too, if you can go out in the woods and get out in the rural areas, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I spent many days in Breckenridge, Colorado, and to be honest, always with the audience, they put our hotel, I think we checked in, it was about 9,500 feet in the elevation, and then they said, you're up the road about a mile, so guess what? Yours truly, the humble host here, I couldn't sleep. I had my head stuck out the window, and they had to send me a little portable oxygen bottle. It's so amazing.
We're like 5,300 feet here in Boulder.
Well, God bless you, my friend.
You can go up to 16,000 feet in some of these mountains.
I'll bet you can. I'd like to stay within about maybe 1,000 feet. But anyway, thank you, John, for checking in with us.
Problem.
But God bless you, my friend, and hope you'll call our show regularly. Doctor, isn't that incredible? I mean, we get people all over the place, and there's one who's lived up to our challenge that he's outside observing in the area south of Boulder, Colorado. A beautiful, clear sky.
He's a lucky amazing. Man.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is incredible stuff, ladies and gentlemen. So talk about some of the things that you're involved in now as You've got an interesting and rich background, and bragging on you once again, your podcast is Carl's Orbit. Tell us more about yourself.
Well, I'm interested, of course, in interviewing people on my podcast, and I try to interview people from all walks of life in terms of who they are, what they have done, and what their business happens to be, if they have a business at all. But coming across many interesting people, I just finished interviewing someone who is an astrophysicist who was talking about the idea of questioning whether or not dark matter and dark energy really exists. And it relates to what I had mentioned before, the idea that his hypothesis was that there are many miniature black holes occurring throughout the universe at the same time in waves, continual waves. And so, as I mentioned, that takes care of the idea of introducing the notion of dark matter and dark energy, which they haven't found yet, which they've been looking for many, many years and have some candidates for it, but never come up with the actual candidate.
Well, you're right. And let's qualify this, Doctor, in the short amount of time we have here. I know you wanted to explain it, but this is something that I like to look at, too. And I don't know if I'm right. I don't think anybody's right. But dark matter, Vera Rubin, the great Vera Rubin, I think she was onto it. It's something that we believe in gravity that holds, let's say, galactic systems or other things together. And Einstein, in his great genius, came up with a confused thing in his mind. You know, he couldn't figure it out, is what I'm saying. He called it spooky action at a distance. But that, you're right, hasn't been proven. But the other strange thing, this really weird conundrum, is this dark energy, which if you think the expansion, like a balloon, will go out so far and either pop and stop, or a rock in a calm pond, the ripples end. What are we seeing, Doctor? Acceleration where we would think there shouldn't be. So we really don't understand. Well, we see 4% of the whole universe, and that's baryonic matter. But this stuff is just mind-boggling. It really is. It's just.
And then there's, of course, the area involving what they're calling negative mass now, which acts like an anti-gravity force, supposedly. Mm-hmm. And some group of scientists, a team of scientists, have come up with the interpretation of their experimental results in the sense that they've come across a sampling of this negative mass. But it was an experiment involving simulation on a computer, so it doesn't wind up being the same because, as you know, what you put into a computer limits you as to what you get out of the computer.
Like AI, there you go. Now the government is now officially in the AI business, I imagine. But, Doctor, this is something I wanted to share for everybody. I haven't seen one. I don't know if you have, but this is interesting, folks. Far and wide on this radio station, around the nation, around the world. Here's a phenomenon that recently has been seen and people have photographed it. They're called sprites, not the kind of soft drink.
Oh, yes.
What these are electrical discharges that occur high above thunderstorms, maybe 50 to 90 kilometers, 31 to 56 miles above the Earth's surface. You'll see this red blast, like you see the lightning come down, but many people are seeing this beautiful red streaming thing, looks like a jellyfish, and they've even photographed it from the International Space Station. So if you're seeing, here's how I describe it, and tell me if this, in your opinion, is right. You're looking out on a long horizon. Let's say you're out in the Midwest. Best place I would imagine is somewhere out in the plains, Nebraska, Iowa. A frontal system of thunderstorms is way down along the horizon in the evening. And that's where people are seeing them line of sight. But you'd see the bolt, and then you'd see a fraction of a millisecond or whatever that is, this thing, and the cameras are catching it. But I was amazed by the picture that was on Astronomy Picture of the Day. Somebody in orbit on the space station sees the thing coming back up into space. Now that is bizarre. What say you? That the phenomenon is weird.
Well, I don't know too much about them. I've come across information about them in the sense that they do occur in different shapes. So you see different forms in the way of sprites. And I think they've named some of the other forms by different names as well. So there's a whole series of these different atmospheric phenomena that occur that way. And as you say, they're spotted really mostly by objects vehicles at a high altitude, of course from the space station, but also from some airliners. Some of the pilots have described very, very interesting, different colors, different shapes, beautiful, different atmospheric kinds of phenomenon. And again, it seems that most of the phenomenon occurring in the atmosphere has a lot to do with electricity that develops in different parts of the atmosphere. And so we have lightning as a result of that and so forth. So there's a lot of electrical phenomena. As a matter of fact, there's a whole branch of study that's called the electric universe, and how the whole universe is based on electrical charges.
Oh, I tell you another thing, too, as we end off in just a few moments here. Thank you for being our guest. That's most important. And again, we're bragging on Carl. His podcast is Carl's Orbit. But here's another thing. Daytime phenomenon, atmospheric optics. Check it out. Just Google it. And you'll see things like what? We see rings, 22.5 degree big, lunar halos, solar halos, sundogs, aurora in the heavens, and a lot of other phenomenon that people take pictures of. And why don't we say this, Doctor? People can send us their pictures if they have any. Just send us what you have, and we'll discuss it on air. Dr. Sky at WABCRadio.com, if you don't mind sharing these images that you have. And also a subject that we didn't touch on, and I know it's the big one for most people out there, new information about the UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, and the UFO of old terminology. So many things here. And one theory, we'll end off on this and give you the last word, that many people are now saying that the government does indeed or is responsible for most of these sightings, that even the Tic Tacs, these so-called anti-gravitational devices or objects, they may indeed be really our technology. And then the whole other side is that, no, it's not, they're telling us maybe there's extraterrestrials out there. Doctor, it might be our technology that we have gotten so advanced on. Luis Elizondo in Imminent, the book, he talks about this, and he's brave as a whistleblower. What say you? Well,
from my perspective, there's not much information that has been disclosed by the government, and it's not coming out from any other whistleblowers anyplace else in the universe. So all I know is as much as you know right now involving that kind of phenomenon. But again, go back to what Carl Sagan, one of his statements, indicating that various types of claims, extraordinary claims, demand extraordinary evidence. And that's the bottom line to the whole thing. Where's the evidence?
That's exactly right. But we say one thing, and we say it proudly here on this talk radio station. Talk Radio 77 WABC. Always remember to keep your eyes to the skies. Dr. Herico, thank you for joining us and giving us inspiration for people who live in, let's say, more light-polluted areas like Amateur Astronomers Incorporated in Cranford, New Jersey, and other locations. And for those of you that are out, let's say, in Boulder, Colorado, that just gave us a call, testifying about their looking at the night sky, something that I hope more and more people do. Because on this conversation, what do we have? We have dialogue, not diatribe or debate per se, or discourse. And I want to thank our helmsmen, both Tony and Bill, for navigating this powerful signal to you, and hope you'll join us once again next week, Friday, midnight into Saturday, 2 a.m., and, of course, Saturday night, midnight into 2 a.m. Sunday morning with the Dr. Sky Experience. See you soon. Clear skies, health, and happiness to all.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. You can hear the Dr. Sky Experience Saturday mornings, midnight to 2 a.m. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
77 WABC invites you to a family fun day and softball showdown on July 20th with net proceeds benefiting Shriners Children's. John Sterling will call the game as the FDNY takes on the NYPD with special guests Dwight Gooden, Art Shamsky, 77 WABC hosts, including Sid Rosenberg, Anthony Cumia, Lionel, Dominic Carter, and many more. For more info and to buy tickets, go to ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org. That's ShrinersChildren'sChampions.org.